Marvel Snap is about to get taken over by zombies. Datamines have revealed the full card suite for October's zombie season, and boy, does it look scary. There is a whole new mechanic in this season. It is called Horde, and to the best of our knowledge, it functions very similarly to the amass mechanic from Magic the Gathering. The idea here is when you play a card that says Horde, if you don't have a zombie horde, you create a zombie horde, and then it gets plus whatever the number of horde is here. So for example, with Zombie Scarlet Witch, when you play a card on her, you hoard 2, so you'd make a horde and then give it +2 power. And then every successive card you play on her gives that same horde +2 power. This to me looks like sort of the linchpin of decks that are built around the horde mechanic. And what I find really interesting about this season as a whole is that it's unclear to me just how many decks are going to be built around the horde mechanic and just how many decks are going to be doing other things. We just came out of a season wherein most of the cards that were released tied into one mechanic, the end of turn mechanic. Not necessarily 100% of them always go in every end of turn deck, but they all sort of tied in. With the zombie season, it looks like they've made a slightly different decision. There are some cards that tie in specifically to the Horde deck, and some cards that look more like top-down designs of what a zombie version of the character would look like. With Zombie Scarlet Witch, she looks like the card that a Horde deck is built around. This is your repeatable enabler, allowing you to say Kitty Pryde or Merlin spells or really whatever it is that you want to be doing to get a large unit into a lane as a sort of additional thing that you get as a bonus for doing what your deck already wants you to do with, say, Elsa Bloodstone or spells or Kitty Pryde or whatever. This is a card that tacks some additional upside onto it. What it really reminds me of is if Angela was just at 3 cost with her old ability. That's kind of what this card looks like to me, and that to me strikes me as a potentially very powerful thing to do. If these decks are going to be good, I think a lot of it is going to be on the back of this. Zombie Mr. Fantastic looks like an attempt to tie in to a different archetype from the Zombie Horde archetype. This is typically the kind of thing that can indicate what kind of decks that they think are going to be good with it. But at baseline, what's happening here is that it looks like it's tying in with created cards, which makes sense because presumably the Zombie Horde, which, by the way, we have an image of that I'll show after this, is a card that is created by an effect. So this activate ability will buff that effect as well. What I find interesting is this feels like a card that is very explicitly geared at helping things that aren't particularly powerful right now. An activate ability that, for example, buffs the squirrels off of Squirrel Girl tokens, or goes in a Victoria Hand hybrid version of a Horde deck. That kind of stuff looks pretty appealing to me, but that stuff is very, very busy. There's a lot of slots spoken for in a Victoria Hand deck, where this card might not actually get up to par because there might not be enough that it actually gets to do in that context. Would you rather play this out, or would you rather get a Victoria Hand on the board so you can Frigga or Bastion it? It's definitely a question that occurs as to where this is actually going to be maximally used. It does look like a card that just has a ton of numbers on it though, right? 2/2, Horde 2, so that's Mr. Sinister base with an activate, and then it also, that's effectively like a 2/5 across 2 bodies. The activate does whatever the activate will do, which is at minimum give 1 power to the other, to the Horde, and then maybe to whatever else you're doing. There's a lot of numbers on this card, but I do wonder if the deck building cost of like, wow, I actually need 4 created cards on the board in order to access all the numbers on these cards, on this card, does impact how good it's going to be. This is the Zombie Horde card, by the way, 0 cost, and it goes roar. Zombie Giant Man here with the tooltip for the Horde mechanic, which is how we know how most of this stuff works. Zombie Giant Man kind of looks like a build-around card or like the payoff card for the Horde deck. At 5/3, his own stats, not compelling, but his ability, Horde +1, giving 1 power to the Horde, and then gains power equal to the power of the Zombie Horde. This is Taskmaster for Zombie Hordes. Really cool as a payoff card that only really works in this context. It takes the effort you've put into making your Zombie Horde and gives you a really big guy on top of that. A couple of things stick out about the Zombie Horde mechanic as a whole that are probably worth talking about in the context of Giant Man specifically, because he is the card that is the most dependent on the mechanic success in order to be good. This is a card that, or a mechanic that has a really notable weakness, i.e. getting ruthlessly Shadow Kinged. The fact that the Horde costs 0 means that it's not vulnerable to Killmonger, which is good, but getting Shadow Kinged is really, really bad. And so you have this setup that almost begs for the anti-interaction pile of Cosmo and Juggernaut that you can protect your Horde with, right? And I think a lot of this is going to be make a Horde, protect the Horde, Giant Man the other lane. That kind of stuff is what this kind of deck strikes me as what it wants to be doing. But I don't know how often it's going to be able to make those Hordes reasonably sized when it doesn't draw a Zombie Scarlet Witch, because that to me looks like so far and away the best build around, like, I am doing this, I have ZSW, I end up snapping because otherwise my deck doesn't work, right? This guy seems so dependent on your ability to set up a powerful Zombie Horde to make him matter. And if you do set up that powerful Zombie Horde, you can get rug pulled by Shadow King. And if you don't set up that powerful Zombie Horde, you're playing a very mediocre 5. And I think largely what strikes me about this deck seems to be at first glance that I think it's going to be really reliant on Zombie Scarlet Witch. At 3/4, Zombie Sentry, doing Horde +1 for each of your cards at the right location is just a really cool little design that is a nod to A, Sentry being the general originator of the zombie virus in Marvel Zombies canon, which is why he's involved here, and B, the fact that it cares a lot about the right location is a cool little inversion of the way typical Sentry and Void play out. This strikes me again as another thing that pushes this archetype as a whole closer to being a Kitty Pryde-based archetype. That's the kind of deck where you can imagine pretty early in the game having the energy off of, say, a Hope Summers, Zombie Scarlet Witch doing the other thing with the Kitty Pryde, all that kind of stuff. You can really imagine having the energy to have a full right lane that isn't actually full, and therefore giving you, the zombie player, effectively a 3/8. And a conditional 3/8 is a powerful card. I mean, Gladiator's a conditional 3/8. I think this card might be a little bit underrated and is going to be an important role player in these lists. So far, this is the last of the Horde package cards. It's just a spell called the Hunger, a skill, my bad, that does Horde +3. That's it. It's 1 energy for 3 power on your Horde. That seems like a very reasonable card, but I do wonder how good any card that has this little impact on the board can ever reasonably be. 1 costs are interesting in this context because I expect this deck to involve maybe some Hope Kitty Pryde stuff, which means it might have a lot of extra energy, which means it might want cards that are more impactful, even though there are no cards that are technically more impactful at growing your Horde than the Hunger is. So it's a really interesting situation for how the deck ends up being built, because it's a deck that's going to scale off of the Horde's power in a very real way, thanks to Zombie Giant Man. I would imagine that this is at least worth considering, but it strikes me as, along with Mr. Fantastic, potentially the least valuable versions or the least valuable inclusions in a deck like this. One of the absolute weirdest cards I have ever seen in my entire life. Zombie Galacti. Galacti? I don't know. Start of the game, choose 6 other cards in your deck. On reveal, turn them into copies of this at 7/4. And I think the reason this is at 7/4 is because, oh man, what happens if you, I don't know, symbiote Spider-Man this, right? What happens if you, like, then you're talking about, oh, I turned all those 6 cards into Hulks, right? To me, I have never seen a card that I've looked at and been like, oh, they just made a Hela more than I've seen this. This is just like, oh, it's Hela. Oh, it's Galactus. This is a card that I feel like just has to be bad, because if it was good, I would imagine they have made so many mistakes along the line to make a card like this, and I'd like to imagine that that isn't true, because this card, like, this is Arishem level, this is Galactus level, this is like, what the hell is going on here? If this is actually good, it's so incredibly unfun, and if this is not good, I mean, thank God, because imagine playing against this regularly. One card that comes to mind here, obviously, I think is Magic, right? This is a card that costs 7 and wants you to have a bunch of the cards that will transform into this on the board. So Magic is like a really easy call. This card is a card that has a ton of potential. I'm imagining, you know, various, like everything that people are doing with the Fallen one right now. This kind of wants to do all that stuff too. And what's really interesting to me is just how different the output is going to be based on what you actually hit with this and what you don't. Like, you're drawing 6 of them. Okay, Magic gives you that extra draw. That's good. This deck doesn't work without this card. That's good. The ability to just like randomly transform, let's say 4 cards into basically the Hulk off of like a symbiote Spider-Man. That's quite powerful. It's quite powerful. The numbers on this card that are going to gatekeep it as strongly as anything really should that can do something this strong are the 7 and the 4. 4 is a really small number. It makes it harder to buff reasonably with Shuri, and it kind of puts me in the I'm really just trying to symbiote Spider-Man this camp. That's really all I'm trying to do. I do also think that this is a card that has unique weaknesses by being a 7-cost card. You'll notice I compared it to Galactus. You notice I compared it to Hela. That's the kind of stuff it compares to, but none of those need you to go out of your way to actually be playable. This is a big swing, and I feel like it could end up anywhere from the new Hela Meta Tyrant horrific to, and I'm hoping for this outcome, fairly mediocre card that's like closer to Nightmare in the context of it's fun, it does a bunch of crazy stuff, but it's not going to be something you see every game that ruins your life. Zombie Captain Marvel is actually just an insanely cool card. You know my policy on destroy cards. The cooler they are, the better. The stronger they are, the better. Whenever destroy is good, that's usually a good thing for game state and game balance. This card is cool as hell. 4/4, activate. Get +3 power for every card that this card destroys. Destroy the cards at this location. Move to a location that you're losing. I mean, that's awesome. That's just awesome. Blow up your location, move to a location where you're losing. Like, that's really, 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 really cool text just to begin with. The gaining of power at that level, like I realize it's a 4-cost activate, 4-cost activates. They're hard to actually make work consistently, but holy crap. Imagine playing a Nimrod into this, right? Like, this is so nutty. They're like having just an activate destroy with Kid Omega has proven to be so valuable for decks like that. I feel like this card is one of the cards I'm the most excited for in this season. Like, there is just a real chance, I think, that this card is going to just be a card that missed really high, specifically in destroy type things. And I think it's been a while since they've taken a risk with destroy. I just hope this doesn't end up in a limited time game mode like Kid Omega did. Like, this is a card that I think, like, what pisses me off about Kid Omega to some degree is that I love destroy because it's a simple deck that a lot of people can get into. Kid Omega should have been a card that is a simple card that a lot of people can get into, play in their destroy deck, and it just wasn't that. And I think this card's, like, the access to it is going to be an important aspect of it because it is so cool. It is so sick. And I really hope it's not locked behind some sort of obfuscated gold payment here. This is a really, really cool card. Honestly, if you asked me what card I'm most excited for from this entire season, I think there's a really good chance that it's this. I don't know if it's going to be the best card, but I just think that it is important for the game that destroy be a powerful and functional archetype at the top levels of play. It hasn't been that for a while, and this card's text is so wacky, and the numbers on it are so big that I really have some hope for the first time in a long time. Colonel America ongoing. Your other cards here have +1 power. For each turn, you have discarded a card. This strikes me as a card for a deck that doesn't particularly exist right now. It's not like there are a lot of decks that are looking to discard a card every turn, and it's not like those decks are looking to win on board in a way that would require this. The decks that are currently discarding are largely doing one-shot discards for big payoffs with things like Hela and Ghost Rider, so it's not exactly the kind of thing that you see a lot of. Weirdly, what this card wants to be in is like strong guy swarm aggro. And you know me, I love me some strong guy. I would love if that was a thing, but I do think it probably requires an enabler beyond what people actually have access to right now. And I do think that it would be really cool if some sort of like just aggressive stat checking deck did exist in a game like this, because it's honestly been a while. Like when you're talking about a card that buffs Destroy, and you're talking about a card that buffs like Strong Guy Swarm Zoo, that's beta archetypes. If they can manage to bring those back, I am super, super into it. And to be clear, if you start getting this guy to like +4 on the every other card in his lane, that's insanely game winning. Like this is a really strong card if you actually are able to enable it reasonably. I'm just not sure that we actually are in the current context of what Marvel Snap looks like. But Zombie Power Man is here to help, I guess. 2/4 end of turn. If you're winning here, discard the leftmost card from your hand. Luke Cage's zombie form, for the record, not really sure why he's Power Man and not Luke Cage here. I don't understand the lore well enough to understand why that's happening and why it's not Zombie Captain America, but instead it's Colonel America. Someone who is more familiar with the Zombies franchise beyond my cursory Googles might have to help me with that one. My greatest familiarity with the Zombies franchise is that panel of Peter Parker getting filled up by the Sandman and going, "Ugh, Gwen," and then exploding. So, you know, not really my forte. But that is all to say that I think that this could be the enabler that Colonel America is looking for, although it might be a little bit, let's say, a context-absent design. Like, it's like, okay, we have Colonel America. We need a card that's going to enable us to discard cards every turn. And giving, like, in the mechanics of Marvel Snap, we don't have a way of choosing those discards, so this is the best that we have. This kind of card is actually pretty compelling to me. The problem I have with it is largely like, okay, if I want to do this to repeat swarms, I kind of want to discard the rightmost card. Like, that's where all my cards that I want to discard go. Like, once I've discarded a card, it goes to the right, and that's where I want to start repeating it. And I kind of wonder if this is just causing me to, like, not have any of the cards that I actually want to discard get discarded. Or, to put it another way, discard all the cards I don't want to discard, right? I'm not sure exactly how I would go about doing this, but if you look at these cards as sort of like a paired set, I can understand how you end up that way. Like, this is like Firelord Airwalker, right? I just don't understand, I guess, when I'd want to be discarding the cards that aren't Swarm or Apocalypse or whatever on the right side of my hand. You know? Absolute banger here. Headpool, I mean, we've talked about Destroy already in the context of Zombie Captain Marvel. Headpool is not going to be better than Deadpool for Destroy. I think we can start there. But it is going to be quite powerful, I think. It's like a very solid second Deadpool. When X-23 came out, a lot of what she did was make Destroy have more evenly distributed draws. And now I think that's not really so true anymore because you care so much more about the Deadpool power scaling. And so we have Headpool, who is more looking to replace the Deadpool power scaling in the games where you didn't draw Deadpool. Or even, you know, throw a little bit of a Deadpool in hand. That kind of stuff can be relevant too. Like Headpool giving that Deadpool a little bit of a head start, no pun intended, could be pretty solid for your late Deadpool draws in when say you drew him on like turn 4 or whatever. It's not going to be your greatest thing in the world to play him out there. Playing him out will be the same as buffing him with a Headpool, and then the next turn you can at least get him up to 4 or something like that, depending on the order you put it in. Maybe it's actually going to be 5, right? That kind of stuff is small ball. It's not like the biggest, most important stuff. And this guy is definitely the small ball to Deadpool's like maximalist multiplicative self. But I kind of think that it might be relevant. I kind of think it might be a decent little piece. It's not going to be a game changer in these decks, but just stacking up some incremental value, having some real upside. We've shown that that matters with X23 with energy, and I think this is largely going to be stronger than X23 is, because the fact is that power matters more than energy a lot of the time, and this is giving more than one power where X23 is only ever giving one energy. I think this is a pretty solid card in Destroy decks. I am very interested in playing it. So, Zombies season, what are your thoughts? Remember, I still read all of the comments. Which of these cards are you most excited for? But I think more importantly, what do you think about the way this season is split? It looks like half of it is Horde cards and half of it is other zombies. Is this how you'd want them to approach sort of themed seasons in the future? I think there was a lot of negative reaction to themed seasons being every card tying into every other card with the Fantastic Four, but I don't know if that actually caused people to be less interested in buying the cards. So I'm interested to know how you reacted to Fantastic Four and if you'd react differently to a season like this. As always, I've been KMBest. You've been phenomenal. Keep yourself safe from those zombies, folks, and I'll see you in the next one.